Okay, so next on your little list is little Dave. This is my favorite man to hang out with, because I tell you, the more you hook yourself with Dave, the less people bug you. And he has what I sometimes wish I had, which is a gun. So, I'm not even going to...
We all had a talk, and Grace is not getting a gun. She lost by 2 votes.
Yeah, well, I tried. Okay, so you don't need a microphone, and you don't need an introduction from me. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dave.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much, Grace. Everybody can hear me? Right on. Going to talk a bit today about bear aware and some of the wild safe issues that have been happening in the last year. It's going to be fairly brief. We had a pretty good year at the lake, all things being considered. And then I'll talk about some of the programs that I've been involved with this year. But bear conflicts at Christina Lake were down this year. Obviously, we've had a couple of pretty significant years leading up to this year. I'm sure we're all but that seems to have kind of worked itself through at this point. You know, we still have significant issues though with getting the word out, and I think generally Christina Lake is excellent at managing a lot of its attractants. The uniqueness of this community though is we have a large recreational population for short periods of time through that sort of that window of bear season, and that's I think the challenge that we face here is we've got to get out to those tourists that come in and stay for a week and let them know that they can't leave their garbage outside the camper, or that the cabin they've rented they can't store the garbage on the back deck and things like that. And it's that revolving door, right, where we go to a site and we get that sort of cleaned up, and then the next group moves in and we're starting all over again. We did have a few limited bear issues, getting into some restaurant garbage and grease and things like that. So, and I mean, those are always going to be issues we're going to have to deal with. Bears are something, you know, unlike an invasive species, bears are a healthy native species. They didn't come here from somewhere else. They're not in a spot they're not supposed to be. We're going to live with them, and they're going to be here. And that's just the reality. So we have to be able to try and mitigate that interaction and try and reduce the risk. And like I say, that's partly my job, is to deal with the public safety aspect, and that's really where we insert ourselves with bear problems. Grand Forks, I'll use it as an example this year. We didn't have a great season in Grand Forks. It was actually the busy spot for me. And when I get complaints, and we get them through the call center all the time, is, you know, bear's been in my carport garbage 4 nights in a row. You need to do something. That's not a bear problem. That's a people problem, right? So those are the types of battles, you know, and those are the calls we're getting. And like you say, that's not going to get a big reaction from us, because that's, other than, you know, you need to clean up your garbage. You need to take responsibility for your property and get those attractants cleaned up. Fruit trees, nut trees, compost piles, you know. And we get it all the time. My yard is clean. It's absolutely clean, right? There's nothing here. And you show up and there's 3 apple trees in the backyard, 4 bird feeders, a compost pile, 3 bags of recycling on the front step, and bear prints everywhere, right? And they can't figure out why the bear's in. It's those types of issues, right? So it's continued public education. We do have some enforcement tools too, because there's a lot of people don't believe it's their responsibility. They believe I'm here as a nuisance avoidance tool for them. So just come bring your trap and take the bear away. It's not how we operate, right? If the bear has demonstrated to be a safety threat, he's causing damage to your property as far as trying to gain access to your residence, he's destroying sheds, or he's just not leaving to the point that he's kind of taking over your yard as his own territory, then we have to look at probably removing that bear just as a safety thing. But I'm not here to protect fruit trees or make your life more convenient. Right, and that's just, like I say, a big part of it is education and getting people on board with that. So what we do is, I try and go into schools. I go into Pearlie and Hutton, and we talk to the kids, and we do a great presentation. A lot of this stuff here that Brenda has is a lot of the materials that we use, and that's the thing I encourage here at the lake, is if you get a chance to stop by and talk to Brenda and look at what she's got for bear aware materials, it's excellent. It's excellent stuff. So really gives good tips on how to bear-proof your home, your yards, things like that. Excuse me. And then, like I say, we really try to get that message to the kids. We were talking earlier here that a lot of the parents won't listen to me, but the kids do, and it's awesome. So I give them all the pamphlets and stickers that I can give, and usually the next couple of days after one of my bear talks, I drive around the streets around Pearlie, and every garbage can has 3 neon yellow Bearware stickers on it. The kids have gone home and are really starting to give it to mom and dad, right? Because we're starting, because people are still putting garbage out the night before pickup, not wanting to pick fruit trees. It's too much of a hassle, things like that. So that really has proven to be effective. I think the school program has been excellent. We're going to start to move into Christina Lake. We haven't done much of the school here. I personally haven't. I think Brenda may have done some stuff at Christina Lake. So that's been good, and I'm going to try and come out and get more involved with the lake here as well. So that's been fairly successful for us. And like I said, we had a pretty good year here this year. It was pretty quiet. We had a couple of family units, sows and cubs, that were hanging around. We still may have 1 or 2 that are still active in the lake right now. And that's just indicative to say we're getting food late in the season, and they're still getting food somewhere. So we still got work to do, and we'll keep trying to get that sort of tidied up. There's other issues though too. The start of the spring here, we had a cat issue, which was cougars, and there was 2 or 3 active cats in the community. There again, they were young cats just trying to make their own way, and they got into an area where they had an overabundance of domestic house cats in the neighborhood, and they found a consistent food source and they stayed. So they were active in the neighborhood for quite a while. The domestic cat population took a bit of a hit, which didn't disappoint too many of the neighbors. I know that much. I was setting cougar traps. One of the neighbors came over and says, "Could you just leave the traps away? Don't put the traps out for another week and then come and get it." Because the house cats are starting to disappear. It's working out. But, so there's all kinds of things, that you're going to encounter living in a community like Christina Lake. You're going to see cougars. You're going to see bears. You're going to see potentially coyotes and more wolf sightings as well. So they're more on the sort of on the outskirts. But our big concern right now through our program with public education is bears, and just how do we live with those animals. They're not going anywhere. They're abundantly available all around us. They're in the habitat, and this is good bear habitat all around us. So they're going to be here. So we have to mitigate them. With that, I guess I would put it out to questions right now as far as wildlife concerns, or anybody has any questions about bear aware or dealing with bears?
Dave, I live on Chase Road.
Yes.
And above us is what we call the long loop, which is that dirt road that runs parallel to Chase above it.
Yeah.
And in hunting season, someone every year dumps carcasses up there.
Yes.
Which is less than responsible.
No, definitely. And
I know you guys are spread thin, but if you could be aware that every hunting season somebody dumps bits of deer up there, and there's coyotes and there's bear. And
I actually received several complaints on that this year from that area, and I dealt with a couple of residents that we thought maybe potentially were involved. I think we've kind of got it narrowed down to where that's come from. We're definitely going to have that sort of hopefully fixed by the fall of next year. And like I say, in general, we in the sales service, if somebody wants to go out into the backcountry and drop and deposit their hunting remains, it's carrying. It's not a big deal, and that's where it goes back to nature rather quickly. Like you say though, if it's neighboring into a sort of a rural community or a spot where we got people hiking and biking and walking, we're not so keen on that. So we'll try and get that straightened out. But I understand there's other things being dumped up there as well. There's yard waste and everything else. So we're gonna try and get that fixed. Yeah.
I had a question posed to me the other day about the wolf population in the area and its impact on, well, A, were they, is their natural range included in this area, and their impact on deer populations and other small mammals?
Definitely. I mean, wolves, we're seeing more and more sort of sign of wolf in the area, and obviously I'm getting more anecdotal evidence. People saying, hunters telling me, yeah, I saw wolves this when I was out hunting and things like that. Wolves will move where the food goes, so they can be very transient that way. And if there's food available, they're potentially going to show up, right? So we're seeing some of that evidence. They're going to be much harder on the larger ungulate populations to start with. Your moose calves, and that are going to take the hit probably first, and elk and things like that. And then their presence could push deer populations out. They're gonna just leave the area because they're not gonna wanna be there. But we don't have a ton of proof right now that just exactly what the wolves are doing in this area. And we're not seeing a lot of livestock predation either in our ranching communities yet. And usually that's a pretty good sign that you've got healthy wolf populations as they start to pick off the cows and the sheep and those types of things. And we're not seeing that yet, that we know of.
Dave, I was talking with John Nemo last night, he gave me a different story about predation on his calves in the Gilpin area.
Yeah, and I've talked to John about it too, right? And there's an issue is a cow that just doesn't come home and we don't know where it went. You can surmise that definitely different things have happened to
A
it.
lot of evidence of that.
So what we need though is, if you're gonna say a wolf killed your cow, we need to have a look at the carcass, right? And say that was killed by a wolf, no, that was killed by a bear, or that was killed by a
Yeah,
cougar.
he was explaining how you can tell.
Yeah, and I know they've had a couple cows that came back with tails ripped off and things like that, and that's starting to show more evidence that we may have wolves in the area. I know in the past, a lot of the ranchers were just having cows go missing, and then for a lot of years, they were blaming the hunters. You know, just poach them. You know, yeah. And I mean, it was happening. I mean, we were having up to the Greenwood area, we had prize bulls. There was a prize bull was killed up on the rangeland up above boundary, and just the testicles were taken. So, so those types of things have happened in the area, right? So there's multiple things at play. You know, and that's why we need a carcass or some sort of evidence to start to link things back to what happened here.
In that same Chase Road dumping ground a few years ago, there was a fairly obscure head and skin and carcass remains dumped there. So it isn't just the wolves.
Oh no, and yeah, like I say, that's like I say that dumping issue up there. That's humans, you know, taking waste and dumping it there.
Yeah.
Like I say, but when we're looking to determine if we've got predators in there, and we do the same thing even, you know, with bears and everything else. If something's dead, you know, there's ways we can determine what killed it.
I'm just saying the predators on the cattle aren't just four-legged.
Oh no, exactly. Well, we still have rustling units in the RCMP, right, to deal with theft and the rustling of cattle. So I mean that's still ongoing. We've got huge areas of rangeland that puts those domestic cow out in very wild locations, right? You know, timbered mountainous areas. So any number of things could be happening, but we have to have the proof. You know, and we've got ranchers that say they've had you know multiple head of whatever they are, sheep, goats, pigs, whatever, just go missing. Well, who knows?
Yeah.
If we have to look at the husbandry practices, how well are they fenced in? If the fences are all down and these things are just walking away, it's easy to blame things, but it's, you know.
Okay, if you look on the screen, that's Dave's next challenge.
If it doesn't have fur, I don't want anything to do with it.
I also would say that because of Dave this year, I got to pet a cougar.
There you go.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with that. Dead, unlike Aaron. So Christina Lake has been very fortunate to have you, Dave. And I gotta say, every time I make a phone call, most of the time when Brenda makes a phone call, we get an answer. And I personally want to thank you for how you handled the bear situation and the boar situation out here for us. Thank you. Not really.
No?
Do you need it?
Well, Dave, I was just asked to speak to the zebra.
Okay, speak to zebra.
If you have an issue with in the invasive species aspect of boat, a suspect boat, or whatever, the RAP line, the same RAP line you phone for a bear problem or a pollution incident or something like that, phone that number, because now we will get somebody to respond to that. And it's very important that we get on top of these things. We do have our border staff now are starting to catalog and inspect vehicles and boats, especially that are coming in that may come from an infected area. Catalog how long the boats have been under the water. Are they wet, are they dry, where are they planning to go with these things? Because we are seeing a lot of people buying boats in the southern US where this is very prevalent, because they're cheap down there, and then bringing them back, and we've had them even shrink wrapped, but they're shrink wrapped in the muscles on them, right? So we've got to get in and have a look at that boat. And like I say, they can be complicated. The big fancy wakeboard boats that have all kinds of ballast tanks and everything suck in the water. If there's water in these boats, they have to be drained and quarantined to make sure that those muscles.
And we have the fridge magnets with the wrap number, the bare magnets, that's the same number as, that's the wrap number, so you can help yourself to the magnets.
Yeah, if you grab a magnet, throw it on your fridge.
And we do have the map put up at the interpretive gallery with the high-risk areas, so when you see a plate with a big boat from California, and, you know.
Yeah, and we're gonna, and the CO Service wants to work with Brendan and the Stewardship Society. We'd like to do a blitz at one of the border crossings probably even next year.
Big banner, we got a big banner.
They got the big signs, they got Zeb the zebra mussel, we can throw
Oh,
that up.
yeah.
And we can start checking some, and there again, it's another public education thing. We got the training from some folks out of Lake Mead, and people are paying $10,000 to $15,000 to have their boat cleaned.
We're hoping Stephanie's gonna help with this program too.
Oh, no, I'm all for the program, definitely, we'll help where we can. I just wondered where the wash station is at the lake.
That's one thing I should have mentioned earlier, is that when we went to the resorts, there is a couple of resorts that have boat wash stations, but guess where the water drains into?
Into the lake.
Into the lake. So we don't actually have a proper wash station here that doesn't drain into the lake.
Well, what the ministry has purchased is, and what we did our training on was we've got 2 portable wash stations. And where I would want to do it is at point of insertion or the intersection, which would be hopefully at the border, right? So if we can stop them at the border and get them to be quarantined there, we can do the washing on site there. And there's actually there's portable containment areas. You actually roll the boat on top of an inflatable containment area. The boat's washed, all that water is contained, and then you have to decontaminate that as well.
Why don't we have that right at the lake main entrance point, so, I mean, where you can contain it, like, why isn't that mandatory with the stewardship group? Why can't they have authority to make that mandatory? The
We
lake,
talked to the MP and the MLA, and
Yeah.
the provinces, like from Lisa's provincial step of mandate for them, it's happening, but it's happening really slow. It's mandatory in Idaho, they've made it mandatory in Washington, they've started stuff in Alberta, but it's slow. It
there's
would be
always
really great.
the concern with making things mandatory that you might not be able to then fund and enforce.
Yeah.
So I think those boat wash stations are like $20,000 a piece or something.
They'd be around there.
So, I don't know if that's part of it, I mean, I don't know what the legislation people do in Victoria and what they're thinking, but I wonder if part of it is, if we make that mandatory, can we actually then follow through with it? We could try and get a voluntary one, but we have to raise.
Yeah, 'cause we've done all the shock tactics with everybody, where, you know how many boats they stopped in the spring, and it was the snowbirds? And it was 7 boats that had been intercepted by May, coming through Idaho, heading for BC. And that was early for them.
yeah.
But they have 15 mandatory inspection stations down there.
Well, prevention's way better than.
And they told us that too, it's like educate.
We were working on it.
Yeah, oh, yeah, well, then it's.
But the cost is a big deal, right?
Grace.
The cost, because even down in Lake Mead, now it's a voluntary basis that they get their boats cleaned, because it is owner paid. So some boat owners with some of these big fancy boats are pulling up, it was taking them all day to clean the boat, and then there was a $10,000 bill at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Just to have the boat
And they were
washed.
saying in Idaho, if your boat gets seized, and you do have the critters on board, to decontaminate, it's impounded for 90 days. 90.
Okay, we gotta march on a little bit here. Peter, quick.
Yeah. Idaho, it's compulsory to license every single boat in the province, or in the state, pardon me. Okay? So you pay a small licensing fee. That pays for 90% of their program. So they're raising approximately $800,000 a year in licensing their boats. And I believe it's something like $10 for a sticker for the year. You buy it just like you buy your fishing license, and every boat must carry it. It would be simple for BC to implement the same thing, and none of us could object to paying $10 a year.
We're not allowed to use the word simple here.
How come every boat that comes into Canada from the States, they have to go through the mountains, through security, you know, with the Border Patrol? Why can't they check them? And, you know, if the boat's coming, if you're importing the boat, they have to check out the trailer anyway. They come out and check the serial number of the trailer on the boat. Why can't they just take a glance on it, and if there's any mussels or anything else on it, why can't they refuse entry into it? They refuse entry into Canada for a lot of other things. Why can't they do
Yeah,
that?
the thing with the Canada Border Services Agency is is that and they can refuse you obviously entry for a lot of things, but they're only federally mandated things. They are not and do not have any authority provincially, right? So if we have a provincial regulation, and we've got an issue with hunters coming up from the US that are telling them that they're gonna commit provincial wildlife crimes once they're in Canada, and the CBSA is saying we can't stop them from coming into the province.
But doesn't every province have that? Doesn't every province don't want the mussels to go in their water systems?
Exactly,
and
but that's why we
everything
talk
else?
about that
Shouldn't that be
presentation is
federal?
working with DFO, and once we get that in the federal legislation, then it's a no-brainer. CBSA, if it's federal legislation, will have full authority. Now, because we in the CO service, and we're trying to work around maybe a little bit of a loophole here, is I have a designation as a federal fishery officer with my appointments as a BC conservation officer, so I have some federal designations. Because of that, they are now inspecting boats and providing me with that inspection information because they're deeming me to be a federal representative. So every boat that comes into Canada right now through Cascade, I get an inspection form on. And and if there's a concern, they're phoning me, right? But that's an in-house.
That's only if you're buying the boat and you're importing it, right?
No, that's anybody trying to enter the country with the boat.
Okay.
Okay? So they're just asking the questions, where'd the boat come from? And they've got a list of the areas we're concerned about. And they're saying, okay, hang on a minute. This boat's maybe from a contaminated area. We're gonna have to talk to somebody about getting this boat cleaned.
Hasn't Parliament thought about this problem before?
A little above my pay grade.
As I had mentioned, the hope federally is that federal regulation, which will then make it mandatory, could make it mandatory at border crossings, they're hoping spring of 2014, is that when that regulation will be passed. It's not there right now.
No.
I don't know why, it's catching people off guard when it's been in Ontario for 20 years.
And unfortunately, with a lot of these things, it takes an issue. You know, we're gonna shut the barn door after the horse is left and the place is burned down, right? And that's unfortunately a lot of how we in government operate. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It's getting in front of these things would be really nice, and we're trying, but it's just not how it operates.
And that's what we're trying to do. Toby, could we raise his pay grade? Okay, we gotta march on. Thanks, Dave. Yep.